Hello and welcome to the Sprint 16 ManageIQ demo. The sprint ended yesterday on December the 2nd. We extended it one day because of the Thanksgiving holiday, and we had some issues on Travis as well. So those kind of extended the sprint by a day, but we didn't move the sprint demo. On to the next slide. Okay, so we'll be going over a bunch of things here. I'll do the sprint statistics. There's a few UI enhancements that Dan's going to talk about. Cloud orchestration, automate, and some other things on Greg McCullough's list. Some interesting Amazon integration from Greg Blomquist. Joe Rafaniello will talk about technical debt and IPv6 communications. And Alberto will talk about REST API, and Rich will tell us what's new in the world of fleecing. Next slide, please. All right, this sprint we almost had 100 pull requests merged, 4 short. So it was 96 in total, 48 bugs, 27 enhancements, and the rest sprinkled around technical debt, refactoring, and tests. A pretty good pace, considering that there was a couple of days off for many people on the team here. Next slide, please. Dan, you want to talk about the charting stuff?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to have Eric talk about that, but just real quick, we did spend a lot of time, obviously, working on the normal bugs and things, but also made some progress on our conversions of the views to HAML, as well as converting jQuery to, prototype to jQuery, trying to get over to a full jQuery stack. So we have made progress on those fronts, but these are the visible progress items that we've made progress on. So Eric, if you want to just talk about these next few slides.
Sure. Over the last few weeks, we have enabled styling of the jqPlot charts. On this screen, you see the out-of-the-box chart styling. Next screen, please. We can now style backgrounds, borders, data point highlighting, legend positioning, and we've added themes. The initial theme is called MIQ, and it's based on the Patternfly color palette. Themes can be selected on the My Settings screen of the configuration area. Next slide, please. In the coming weeks, we will be adding donut charts, as well as enabling the charts to resize dynamically to fill their parent containers. This is important for mobile and tablet rendering as we switch to Patternfly responsive layouts. We're also working with the Patternfly design team to add more variety to the color palette to accommodate the large number of data points we need to display in some of our charts. And that's charting for this sprint.
Next slide, please. All right, so we've also made some progress on the I-18N front. Actually, we've been working on it quite a while, but now we can actually have some visible progress. What we currently put in just to be able to show the languages was that will allow the language to follow the browser setting. What we're going to be doing in the next sprint, hopefully next sprint, we'll be adding the ability for admins and users to actually choose which language, the available languages that we have to use. And I've got a short demo. I don't know, Martin, did you want to talk to this demo while I play it?
Well, it just demonstrates that the selection follows browser preferences.
Okay,
so you can run it for a short while.
Yeah, I'll start playing it. If you want to chime in, go ahead. I'm going to go on mute. Oops. Okay, I need to share my screen. Marianne, can I share my screen?
Just be able to click on sharing. It's not doing it. There you go.
Cool. Sweet.
I guess that last one was if a language doesn't exist, then it would default to English.
Or does it go in the order that you specify in that list?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Dan, Martin, you want to explain to us?
there's a fallback to use English. So basically, if you select Czech, which is not present, you get English. That's it.
Cool.
Very good.
Okay, that's it. If you want to go back to presenting the slides.
Okay. Greg, I think you're next. Greg McCullough.
Excuse me. All right. So in this sprint, we got the cloud orchestration modeling merged in, and that's just the base that cloud formations and Heat will build on top of. So we're in the process, pretty close, I think, to getting the AWS Inventory Collection in, doing a little bit of refactoring and responding to review comments there. So that's close. And we've also been spending time on being able to create the service dialogues from the template, getting that's somewhat done, but we're refactoring that, laying that out a little bit better. And we've done a prototype around being able to deploy these through Automate. That was just a proof of concept, so we want to go back. We need to subclass the request and tasks to be able to add more functionality into the base modeling there, but we were able to at least show that through Automate we could accept the parameters from the dialogues and pass those through and be able to create the stacks through the template. So hopefully we'll get some good progress on that in this sprint.
Cool.
All right, next slide. So this was a user request right now from web service. If you kick off an automation request, I think prior the default was that the zone was not specified. So what they needed to do, since Automate can run against really any resource, they didn't have a way to specify what zone to place this in. So we've added a parameter you can pass MIQ zone, and you can see that the default is whatever server you're talking to. So whatever appliance you have that's exposing web services, it could be in any of the zones, or obviously you could have multiple. So whatever zone you're talking to, that's default where it'll run. You can also kind of specify a blank zone, which will say run anywhere, which probably is limited in its use cases, but was easy enough to support, and somebody may have a use for that. And then obviously the real goal, what we were trying to get to, is as part of the web service request coming in, being able to specify the zone where you wanted this to run. If it was outside of the zone of the server you were talking to for some reason. And then the thing to note is that if you specify a zone that doesn't exist, the web service will get a failure message back that zone is not available. So a quick sample in here of just a Savan call passing, excuse me, the MIQ zone of Matwa. Yeah, that's the way it works. So cool. Pretty simple. Yep, fills a good need for being able to send automation where you need it to go, which we didn't have before. So next slide. for this one, automation, or basically doing requests, the messages were set and automate, and a lot of times overridden by the modeling. So if a user had a specific message that they wanted to present to the end user on this screen, a lot of times that would get stepped on by the modeling code. So the request here was to be able to allow a user to override that message and specify anything they want. The real use case here is services and error conditions, I would think, where you want to be able to get a message to the display on the screen there. Before, it would say something like, service provisioning completed successfully, but that might not be the end message that you really want to show to the user. So this works with both VM provisioning requests as well as service requests, and gives the user a little bit more control. If you do set something and you want to unset it and go back to kind of the standard messaging, you would just set the user request or user message to nil, and it'll just go back to its normal flow, what it's doing today. And then one more is next screen. So this is the top part is highlighting in the current user guide. We talk about if you're using LDAP for user authentication and you do not select the get user groups from LDAP, you have to specify the users in the system. And for some users, this was a large number. So what they wanted to be able to do was allow them to specify a default user that when a user authenticates through LDAP properly, they get assigned to a role instead of having to pre-define every single user that might be coming in. And I think also their LDAP, they don't really use groups that much, so that it wasn't really an option to have the group. So in this one, if you do not have that get user groups from LDAP, you can then choose the default role default group that a user would get assigned to. Once they're in the system, then it works normally. You can change that person's group if you need to. Then it just gives you a way to not have to predefine every single user.
So is this for the MIQ LDAP?
This is MIQ LDAP right now.
Right. So it's not the LDAP when
not
you're going
through
IPA.
IPA yet.
Okay.
Yeah, not at this point. But I think it probably could be.
Yeah, just somehow to specify a default group.
Yep. Yeah, I was thinking about that as well. Yep. And yep. So those are the things that were merged this sprint.
Awesome.
Next.
Great. On to Greg.
All right. Sure. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. So on the provider front, we got merged in the Amazon AWS Event Collection. We worked with Amazon during their closed beta for the AWS config service to develop the eventing integration with AWS or for AWS config. This service emits configuration changes on some scheduled basis, and ManageIQ uses that information as events, as like the event payload. This functionality was actually demoed at Amazon's reInvent conference. What was that, last month, I think? This introduces the third of three of the main pieces for integrating a provider with ManageIQ. We typically need inventory, metrics, and eventing to get like a holistic picture of a provider. This finishes it off for Amazon, which we're pretty excited about. Brings them up to par with all of the other providers that we've had. This also enables event-based policies for AWS in ManageIQ. One thing to point out is that configuring AWS config is still kind of an exercise left to the reader. You've got to go and configure this in your own AWS environment. I was just looking at the requirements there. It looks pretty simple. They've really cleaned that up, so it should be really quick to go get that set up and running. I'm in the middle of documenting some of the requirements we have that the ManageIQ application actually has for working with AWS config. But it's pretty simple. And like I said, it finishes off that last bit that we've been trying to get for AWS. And that's it.
Thanks. I just wanted to clarify. It's on the provider functionality. This is the provider insight functionality, and I think this is the third of 4 pieces. So we have inventory, we have metrics, we have events, and we also have VM fleecing. So I think we got 3 out of the 4 pieces done. VM fleecing is a to-do item that Rich and his team are working on. But yeah, I mean, this is awesome stuff that we finally have events from Amazon. It's really going to enable policies and events and all sorts of good things.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out.
Okay, from a technical debt perspective, the first big one was Greg M was able to get the SmartProxy removed, which is the host directory. That was used as that was a module we had that you installed on remote systems that allowed us to get to systems that we didn't have other ways to communicate with them. And that functionality is either not needed or has been replaced by the WinRM gem. In addition, Aaron's been working a lot with getting off of our Rails fork. So these are some of the main ones that he was able to get done this sprint, including one of the big ones is for region support, which is the second one, the big serial for primary keys.
Wow.
And he's currently working on getting the tests and getting the migrations working on Rails 4.2. And I think as of yesterday, he had migrations working. So we're continuing to just remove this technical debt in this area. In addition, there were some tests, sporadic test failures that we cleaned up, and lots of little things that we've cleaned up. Next slide. From a feature perspective, I started looking at the IPv6, primarily communicating to remote VMware, vSphere, and ESX hosts, and also Revim or Overt. And the primary issue I was running into was using IPv6 addresses, which might not be that used with many places because of they'll be very large long addresses. So for the most part, most communication will be hostname, but from a getting IPv6 started, this was a good place to start. So there were issues with the underlying libraries that we use for communicating to VMware, which is HTTP client. And on the Revim side, there were from the core net HTTP library, but also our Overt and REST client gems that we depend on. Those all are in flight. Some of them are already done, and so I'll be continuing to work on those, trying to get those upstreamed and incorporated. And next will be to do some of the modeling changes for how we're actually going to specify an IPv6 address versus IPv4, using host names, that kind of stuff. In addition, looking at OpenStack, trying to get that communication working. And that's it.
Next slide. Okay. On to the REST API in Alberta.
Hi. So in this sprint, a couple of minor changes here. So the first thing is, we're going to semantic versioning standard for the versioning of the API. So, at least when we have updates or changes, so we can clearly get, know compatibility and what have you. So, the next round is version 1.10, and it's pre-release, early development stuff. So that'll be the release of the version we have today. Okay, so a couple of enhancements. Subcollections of accounts. So once a VM has been, updated here on the hosts, so you can query the sub accounts, the accounts of a VM. In this case, you can see as an example, we're getting a VM 320 accounts. So you can see the user accounts that are on that VM. Optionally, if you're just getting, the VM and you don't want to specify the sub-collection, you can do the expand. And I'll give an example of that later. Next slide.
So the accounts information is available after VM gets fleeced, right, by the fleecing code? Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
Next slide, please. So same. We're also exposing the the guest application, the software collection on the VM. Same here. API VMs you're interested in /software, and you see those as resources. In this case, just an example of LibreOffice. And same way you can do an expansion of the sub-collection with the expand parameter. Next slide, please. So as an option, if you're getting AVM, you can also expand the multiple sub-collections with one query. So you can do expand accounts and software. So what you get back is the VM list of attributes, but also the sub-collection there, accounts and software, which this way you have a single round trip to get all that information. So that's all I have for the REST API.
Cool. On to Rich.
Okay. So this sprint, Mo has been working on automating some of the fleecing tests we've had, and automating fleecing tests has always been problematic because you kind of require a disk image or something fairly large, which you couldn't make available on Travis. So we utilized the camcorder gem so we could actually run the test natively, pointed at a local repository or shared repository of images, and just make cassette recordings. And then those recordings are checked in similar to what we do with BCR. So now that's been checked in for this sprint, and hopefully that'll be the foundation for all fleecing stack tests going forward. The hardest part is getting the structure in there and having the methodology put in place, and now we have that. So hopefully this will also enable some of the larger changes we want to make to the fleecing code going forward, because we'll be able to test for regression based on this. So that's a good thing. Other things we've been doing basically on this sprint has been sizing future fleecing efforts, completing our Amazon fleecing and OpenStack fleecing of instances, and SEVMM.
Completing the estimation of it. The sizing of it, right?
We're doing sizing of that this sprint. So now, once the sizing is complete, we'll be able to schedule the actual implementation of those efforts.
Excellent. That's it. All right, cool. Yeah, next time, Rich, it would be good if we had a slide on that. All right. With that, I turn it over to questions and comments. Jason, you have something?
Yeah, I have one thing related. It's not directly related to ManageIQ code, but I did some work on the bot this past sprint and upgraded the bot to RuboCop 0.27. I made a talk post on that, which many of you have probably seen. And there's a lot more cops, a lot more things that it's checking for. So I'm going through and trying to clean up some of that. Also trying to, now that the bot is open source on ManageIQ/MIQ_bot on GitHub, I'm starting to go through and threw in a bunch of issues in there and just starting to implement a bunch of things that people have asked over the past year or two. Is that it?
Cool. All right. Any questions, comments from anyone?
The I-18N, what constitutes when a new language is added? I didn't see Japanese there. Something that's...
Yeah, so there's two efforts. First, the I-18N we're going through all the code, at least the visible parts of the code, the UI, and making sure that each screen can be translated. So I think what Dan's team showed was that the login screen cannot be translated, and I'm sure there's other screens as well that they've been working on. So that's kind of step one, part one. Part two is going to be a translation effort, a localization effort, that's going to, the priorities for which are going to be driven by the community and by the business at Red Hat. There's some things that Red Hat is going to focus on. There's some things that are going to be important to the community, and the community will just do it.
There are websites that help with translating open source projects like TransFX, and I think there's a couple others. So we're probably going to be leveraging one of those, see if we can get the greater community to start submitting translations.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. There are no further questions or comments on the phone or in the chat, on the BlueJeans chat. Then this demo is over. We'll have another one in roughly 3 weeks. We'll see what the schedule is like, considering that Christmas is in roughly 3 weeks. So it may be a little bit earlier or a little bit later. We'll adjust accordingly. So, thank you very much.